So it's January 1st, 2023. Happy New Year, which means it's time for me to take down my display. While doing so, I figured I would take you guys along for the ride and kind of show you some of the behind the scenes of how everything is set up. Watch me tear it down, kind of walk through, talk through it. Before I go up on the roof though, kind of walk through some of my tools of the trade, is I will be taking my 9/16 impact, two 9/16 wrenches, one's a shorty, one's a long. I will be taking up two rollerblade wheels. This will make more sense to you later. Zip ties, lots of zip ties. And last but not least, labels. So you'll see as I kind of go through and I start taking all the wiring down, you'll watch me kind of label everything. Those are the primary tools. Oh, last but not, well, not last. We have wire cutters, dikes, and then now last but not least, S-hooks, and you'll see what these are for later. One of the things about my display is I actually have it set up and designed so that I can take and put everything up by myself and take everything down. With everything being so high in the air off the tip of my roof, it takes a little bit of ingenuity and a little thought process to get it there, but you'll kind of see the different elements on how that works. So without further ado, let me get up on the roof and start walking through. We're going to start off just by taking down all of the wiring, removing all the trip hazards before I actually start taking down any of the props. So as taking everything down, I'm going to start with the snowflakes on my roof. This year there are 26 of them. Previous years there was 28. And next year there'll actually be 31. The way that they're laid out wiring wise is each row is a single port. It's very basic, quick and simple, easy for me to label. You know, this is snowflake 1, 2, 3, 4 as it relates to ports. And then over here it's 5, 6, and then those three over there at the corner are 7. So the way that the snowflakes are mounted, I've talked about this in previous videos, but it's essentially a PVC frame and a sandbag, and then it's zip tied at the very top with a little connector that I've 3D printed. Very simple, very effective, nothing fancy. So for controlling my snowflakes, it's just a receiver board that's connected over to my K8. And you'll see here, one of the other things is for my power injection, you'll notice that there's one that's disconnected. And I point that out only because that one was actually not used. So I didn't want power coming out to an empty connector. So one of the tricks I do to reduce the amount of wire that's on my roof is at the box I use 18-4 wire. It allows me to create two power injection points off the same line that's coming out. Then at the other end, what I do, you'll notice that they're opposite. So I have the male and the female. Well, what this does is it allows me then to take a jumper wire from here to the other prop with a much shorter wire, reducing the amount of wire on my roof. So kind of one of the tricks that I've done for years. Like that, so you can see here, for snowflake 1, I've gone ahead and I've taken all of the wires that are associated to port 1 for the snowflakes, for the 4 on the left here, so 1 through 4, and then I zip tied the label to it. So next year when I go to do setup, I'll grab this bundle, I'll know all of these wires go to that specific port for power injection and for data. So that takes care of all the wiring on this side of my roof. Kind of get down there. So quickly I'll show you here how I take the snowflakes off. So you'll notice that there's just two zip, well you can't really see, let's try this. There's two zip ties here at the top. You can see this, it's just floating. It's essentially cut, cut, and that snowflake is now ready to be put away. Now for the stand, it's just as simple as you see here at the bottom. Ooh, that one's on there. Alright, well I guess I'll be taking that apart out the ground, but once this pops out, it will fold. So actually here. There we go. It folds over, and that folds up flat, and now I'm ready to hang it on the side of the house. And just like that, all the snowflakes are down and not put away, but at least off my roof. You can see them down there. You know, I'm getting ready to be put away with the storage origami coming soon. I know last I was going to mention of maybe potentially taking the matrix down, but instead I think we're going to go to the singing faces, because this is kind of an opportunity to open up a walk space for myself. Kind of a quick story. I originally bought these, I believe, in 2018 or 2019. They were in my display for one season, and my family told me never again because they thought they looked creepy. I guess it was just the way that I put them in the display at that time. I added them back very discreetly. They're not in any of my groups or anything else. The only time that they're on is when they're intended to be singing. So with that, kind of show you how they're mounted here. This is going to be the first opportunity to see why I have the 9/16 wrenches. So you can see on my tree here, there's the cross member bar. What I've done is I've attached down here a holder that actually is holding the singing face. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'll go ahead and loosen this bolt, remove these bolts back here, which are being pressed against here, and then I'll be able to lift this entire thing off and set it down. So I figured I'd quickly point this out because I totally forgot about it. And looking at the back of this singing face, you'll notice that I have power balancing going in between the different pixels, different sections. Actually, that's not power balancing, that's a jumper wire. That is a power balancing wire from the beginning to the middle. This is when I was at the very early stages of learning what power balancing and power injection was all about. So now I'm going to go ahead and go over there and take the other one down and do the same exact thing. So I think the next thing on the list to take down are going to be my spin Archies. I got one here on the left and one over there on the right. These are 839 pixels, and kind of an interesting story. These originally had, I'll call them fire pixels in them, and which of course is not allowed on my roof anymore. So what I ended up doing last year was I took pixels. Oh shit, incoming. So I don't know where I left off, but so the pixels that are in this are actually from the original Matrix I made in 2015. I've not had a single failure of any of these pixels. I intended this year to replace all of these with 5-volt bullets, but it works fine, so why do anything with it? So maybe next year, I highly doubt it, but the way that this is wired up, just real quick, it's running off of 2 ports, and then you can see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 power injection ports throughout this. I only need 4, but I added a 5th just for good measure. The way that it's mounted, this is HDPE right here. This is 3/4 inch EMT that I rolled to equal the profile of the spin Archie. And then it just has a piece of PVC across the bottom. Actually, I think that's EMT. That is EMT, and then PVC fitting. So it works really well. And you'll see here in a few minutes, so when I take it down, how I disconnect it, cut all of these zip ties, roll it up so I can take it down off the roof. So I'm going to go ahead and take the spin Archie down. You can see all it is just a few zip ties, and it comes right out. And just like that, it's off the roof. With it coming off the roof, you can see here, it's just sitting there, so I'm going to cut all the external zip ties and take the frame off. But with that out of the way, it's now starting to expose the actual frame that's holding up everything on my roof. As we go along, you'll see more and more of this frame and how it's all constructed and holding everything up there. And in just a few minutes, there it is, all rolled up, ready to go back up into storage. with the frame, and then we're going to do the same thing to the other one. Literally 5 minutes and it's down. With my spin arches down and wrapped up, ready to come off the roof, next up to take down are my pixel pulls. There's one here on the left, right, and then the other one over there on the left. They're both identical in that they are 16 by 72 pixels, but these were definitely my most challenging item for me to mount this year. So you can see here, the base of them are right over the ridge of my roof. So I really had no ideal places to be able to mount them. So I ended up concocting this contraption over here that allows for me to be able to mount it across between over the ridge from one side section of my roof to the other section of my roof, and then again in the back. You can see over there connects back over here, and if I walk around, try to do it as smooth as possible. You'll see that it's mounted here up to that point, and then across comes back down to over here, which actually worked out well because this kind of became a step for me whenever I needed to be able to reach something up high, such as bolting it together up there or bolting it up there. I was able to reach pretty easily. Also, it connected this side of my roof, the frame over there, to this frame over here. And actually, I mean, you'll see more of this as I go through, but the frame from one side of the roof all the way to the other is all interconnected. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one down now. Nothing real special on how it's wired. It's just essentially 2 ports and then 2 power injection points on each port. Nothing spectacular, but it was, for figuring out how to mount it, was definitely a challenge for me. So again, with 9/16 wrenches, I'm going to go ahead and unbolt it, bring it down, and then I'm going to set it on one of my snowflake stands so that I can cut the zip ties and take it off. Forgot to disconnect the star there, but you can see how it comes down, so I'll just go ahead and cut all the zip ties. It will be done. Just like that, it's off. Simple. So the pixel pull here on the right is going to be basically a copy and paste of what we did on the left-hand side one. A little different on the mounting here. You can see it is again bridging the cap of my roof, but on the back side I have the fireplace in the way, so I have the back bar over there, and then 2 connection points for the poles that come up on the right side here, and then again here on the left for mounting. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one down. I'm not going to film me taking it down just because it's a rinse and repeat. So I figured I'd add a quick clip to show you how I mount the stars on top of the pixel poles. You'll see here I just built this little frame that equal to the size of the snowflake, and then it's simply zip tied. I've got 2 zip ties on the bottom to keep it from spinning, and then 1 up here in the middle. It was the same on the other one, but I didn't have a chance to take a picture or film it, so I figured I would do it here. So I wanted to walk through how I actually powered my matrix. This is a 5-volt matrix. I am a firm believer that 5-volt has a place in your display alongside your 12-volt. Those are all 12-volt, but with the matrix being so condensed, it's a great candidate for 5-volt pixels. In this example though, I didn't want to have to do a bunch of power injection, and I also didn't want to deal with the power loss that does come with 5-volt. So you'll notice across the bottom what I have done is I've interconnected the positive and negative across the entire bottom of the matrix. This allows for easy distribution that's even across the matrix of power, along with, the cutting the data. So this is running off of 8 ports. I do run in 1 power injection line, only 1 needed for each and every input. So, and then over here, what I've done is it all comes back here to my K8. You'll notice right here out front though, I have these labeled 1, 2, 3. What this is indicating, you'll see this in a second, is which power supply all of these are connected to. So, to make it a little more clear, you'll notice on my K8, I only have data coming out of the controller. I do not send any ground or any power out of it. All the ground is tied in at the bottom at the power supplies themselves. And then data is connected in to the distribution boards here. That allows me, for this particular matrix, to easily just use 2 power supplies to run it and be able to identify without worrying about crossing the V+ of what's covering what. The third one is actually extra. You'll notice it's not in use. I was going to put it on my spin Archies, convert those to 5 volt. I didn't, so that just sits there blank. I hope that makes sense. Here's just kind of another close-up view. It's just positive to negative, negative to positive, positive to positive, positive to positive, negative to negative, all the way across the bottom. Oh, and the power injection line fell out. Interesting. Huh. Wonder how long it's been like that. So, hope that made sense. Next up on the list to take down is my matrix. It's 92 by 46 pixels, I believe, so a total of just over 4,300. Taking that into account, it roughly weighs 85 to 90 pounds. There was obviously no way that I was going to be able to carry this up on my roof by myself. So what you see here is actually 4 sections that I cut. But in order to accomplish that and ensure that I could bring it up on the roof, I went ahead and left it as 1 piece on the ground and then added sections that I'll show you here in a minute that are ribs that allowed for me to bring this up, set it into its place, and have it naturally come back together. If you can see here where it's split, you'll notice behind it is a 1/2 inch piece of steel. So what I did was I had that at each intersection, and then I zip tied that intersection together. You can see here as an example. That brought it back to its natural form as it was when it was 1 whole piece. Over the season, obviously it's moved a little, but from the street, it looks like a single piece. So let me go ahead and take this down and I'll show you. Oh, before I do so, I mentioned early on about the S-hooks. This is where they come into play, is what I do in order to be able to cut the zip ties and not have it fall. I'll go ahead and put this S-hook in here, like so, and put it on there. So now I'll put another one over here, just like this one is here. I'll cut all the zip ties, have it fall onto the S-hook, and then I can lift it off. So as you saw there, once I cut that last zip tie, you'll notice that it fell down onto the S-hooks. Allows for me to then pick it back off and set it on the ground without having to fight with it. All right, so now I'll go ahead and do the other 3, and then you'll be able to see the ribs on the frame. So just like that, the matrix is down on, excuse me, on my roof and ready for me to roll up. Coming back to the frame here, it is 3/4 inch 14 gauge steel, and then I used 1/2 inch ribs in between. These are the spacers, and that allow the exact 1/2 inch pixel to pixel and allowed me to zip tie it together really tightly. It's just then zip tied to my other frames, and I'll cut those and I'll just take this off. And just like that, the frame's ready to come down off my roof. And luckily it doesn't weigh much, so I'm able to carry it up and down alone, which is back to my theory of I need to be able to put up my display and take it down all by myself. Next on the list to take down are my Gilbert Engineering XLS 450s. These are the 5 main towers across the front of my house that hold them up. They're all on a pulley system, as you can see at the very, very top up there. Each one pulleys up and pulleys down, which I'll show you here in a minute. And then at the bottom, what I've done is the steel cable comes through a nut. This nut is really just there to allow for me to put it up and put it down in a controlled manner. And then I just lock it in with a hose clamp. These towers themselves are 10 feet tall, just like the Matrix. They are 3/4 inch 14 gauge steel. And then I use the 1/2 inch steel in the middle. What these are, although they do add some structural aspects to it, they're really not there in intention of structural. They're there as guides. So you can see here on the back, I zip tie the back of the frame for the XLS 450 to each one. This allows for me to take it up and take it down in a controlled straight manner and keep it aligned. So during the season, when it's all windy and etc., they stay right in the middle, and I don't have to worry about them flopping. So I'll set you up in the stand and start taking them down. And as simple as that, all 5 of the XLS 450s are down. This kind of gives you a better open view of the towers there. You can see it's essentially a carabiner that I had connected to the top of them to be able to pull them up and down. So I guess next up, we'll tackle some trees. So just going to do a quick review on my trees. They're 28 by 80, and the way that they're powered is each one, the one over there on the right side of my roof and over here where I am on the left, each one has its own dedicated K8. They are 5-volt pixels. Each port, there's 320, and then I have 2 power injection points across the bottom, all the way around, all 7 ports. Nothing super fancy here, but you're kind of noticing a theme here where I have controllers strategically located throughout my roof. This one powered everything, or controlled, I should say, everything on the right side, left side of my roof if you're looking from the street. And the one on the other side conversely did everything on the right side. So that's why you'll see here, I do use the receiver boards off these K8s. So with the wiring out of the way, I can better talk through how my trees are actually mounted on my roof. One of the questions I always get is, is it secure? Is it going to fall? What about the wind? So you can see here, shaking it as hard as I can, and it doesn't move. We actually had 60, 70 mile an hour wind gusts through the season, and I had no concerns with this moving at all. So let's kind of start with the bottom. So this bottom ring is 33 inches, if I'm not mistaken. It's 1¼ inch steel tube that I bent on my Harbor Freight roller. It connects into a 1-inch piece of 14 gauge steel, and then I have a 1/2 inch piece of brace through the middle. This makes sure that it doesn't lift on the front, and then it's supported here in the back and locked in with these nuts. I do have a boat winch to be able to raise and lower it safely by myself. I will say though, you can see here, this is not taut. So the tension is not actually on the boat winch. At the top, I have bolts up there. So once I winched it up, I went ahead and locked in the top. And then I have these cross members that come down to support the top also. They connect in here, and another one connects down there. Again, back to the top. The guy wires you see here, these guy wires are really not there for anything structural. What they're there for is to put tension on this particular pole to make sure that it doesn't flop around. Same on the other side. So I'll take a few minutes, release some bolts, and I'll start showing you how I take this down. Oh, you're also going to see where the rollerblade wheels start to come into play. So a couple of other things before I start taking this down that I kind of wanted to note. You'll notice at the top up here that I have the wires zip tied to this center pole here. I'm reaching up with my arm as high as I possibly can, and there's no way that I can reach it. One of the things that I did do is I wanted to make sure that if any of my pixels went out at the very top, I'd be able to get to them and change them or address them. Luckily, I didn't have any pixels go bad this year, but this bottom rail was designed to be able to hold my weight so that I can crawl up to the very top and be able to access and be able to manage any of the pixels. Obviously I can't get to the topper, but it did allow for that to happen. So kind of just a quick note on how sturdy this actually is. Next up, you'll see me taking it down all together. So in order to take this down, the first thing I need to do is I need to remove the guy wires and unbolt the pole. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I also loosened the bolts at the top, putting the tension back on the winch. Let's go ahead and put these wheels on. Okay, gonna go ahead and do the other one. So as it comes down, the wheels are there to allow for these poles to go ahead and just roll along the roof. So you can see here, that's the rollerblade wheel on the end. It allowed it to roll on my roof without doing any damage. And there's the other one. Kind of grab you. So with the tree down, you can kind of get a better look here. So at the top, you can see here is the hook. There's just a wheel up there. These are actually for exercise equipment, if I'm not mistaken. When I bought them, you can see here my Mickey on the top just has a 3/4 inch steel pole to be able to mount to. This is bolted to my topper. The topper is made out of aluminum. It is 13.5 inches in diameter. Each hole is spaced at 0.9 inches. I did make this in my garage. The strips are connected via carabiners, allow for quick, easy on and off. And then the bottom. Pretty simple setup. I mean, obviously it takes a couple of minutes to take it down and put it up, but once it's there, it's very, very stable. It's actually being held up right now by just on the bottom here. I have these little supports on either side. These are, not meant to be fully structural, but structural enough that while I'm putting it up and taking it down, they'll hold the pole vertical for me. So with the tree down and out of the way, you can get a better sense and view of how it's all actually set together. So here's the frame that kind of comes up to the peak here, and then it all center converges in the middle, and then there's the winch, and then this is bolted onto here, and that's kind of to the base. I already took my topper off, which was my magical spinner. You'll notice again, everything is labeled. That's all zip tied together, and it'll go into storage just like that until next year. Same with the topper up here. You can see where the topper bolts, and then there's an indicating hole right here just to stop it from spinning around. That comes back over to there to kind of give a sense of how that's put together. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish taking this down. And then next up are my mesmerizer pole tower thingies. So next on the list are my Boscoyo mesmerizer towers. These ones are a little interesting as what you see right here was never actually planned to be in my display. Initially, this was just going to be a Boscoyo mesmerizer, but when I did the initial setup, getting ready for opening night, I didn't like the way it looked, and I'll insert a picture into it. Maybe now I'll cut it, and so you can see what it did look like. But I knew I wasn't using my mini trees, which were last year 50 by 16, so I had all the strips in the garage. So I figured maybe I can do pixel poles up there using the strips that are 6 wide. So I designed this little 3D topper and figured that would work. After I built this new frame, it didn't work at all. So that's why you see that there's actually 4 strips there. Even at that, I really didn't like the way the strips looked, at least during the day, because let's face it, they're a hot mess right now. So then I decided to take another churn and cut up one of my other matrices that I wasn't using and do it that way. So then I started putting these together. As you can see, they look a lot better, much more uniform, a lot cleaner. It's my 6 wide by 50 tall, not the 4 wide, but I honestly never fully used them. It was stayed at 4 for the entire season. Next year they'll be 6 and they'll be all uniform. I just ran out of time. But there was some positive things that came out of that whole situation. One, these were absolutely amazing in the display. Absolutely amazing in the display. It's that they brought that extra, oh shit, extra element that was really needed to encapsulate the entire display. So the way this is all mounted, the Boscoyo Mesmerizer is connected to a pulley. Surprise, surprise. These are connected to pulleys that go up there, allow me to take them up and take them down, very similar to everything else, to help guide them up. I don't have the steel poles like I do here for the Mesmerizer, so I have paracord that goes up and all the way across. You also notice that this is mounted via guy wires, not via a pole in the back. That is a direct product of this not originally planning to be a full pole that's just over 10 feet tall. Actually, this one's a little taller. It's 13 feet over there at the lower side of my roof. So in turn, I had to come up with a better way, so I went with guy wires. There's one that goes up to the lower section where the Mesmerizer's at, kind of the middle of it there, and then another one that goes up to there. This is going to be one pole that I won't take down by myself because I can't do anything with the stars, and it's honestly a little too sketch for me to do it by myself, so I'll wait for one of my boys to come over and help me. Everything else, the other towers, and like the tree, of course, as you saw previously, I'll take down, but not this one. It's too sketch because I have to lean it basically this way on my roof, and doing that by myself, it starts spinning, it's heavy, I don't want to lose my balance. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and lower these, take all the pixels down, take the Mesmerizer off, and call it a day. Oh, that's the other thing. So just real quick for mounting, it is just like I did before with the pulley here, and then the nut, it kind of locks it in. You'll notice over here I don't even have the hose clamps. Honestly, didn't need it to keep it from moving. It's just zip tied to the frame that's on the back of the Boscoyo Mesmerizer on either side, right there and down there. These are just zip tied at the bottom, nothing spectacular. Kind of same up there. This I will say was a little sketch coming into one carabiner like that, but it seemed to work. That's the other thing you'll notice, that I did add cross member guy wires also besides the ones that are there, because really this thing, when I didn't have those, in the wind it was shaking. I really wanted to make sure it was stable as possible, just like everything else, so I added that. It worked well enough. I don't think I'll change it next year, but let me know what you think. Also, with the Boscoyo Mesmerizers, because of the fact that all of this was an afterthought, I hadn't planned on having all of these extra ports and needing them over here. Everything was planned specifically for this Mesmerizer. So what I ended up doing was throwing another receiver board in. So I have 1 and 2, as I call them, or A and B. The 1 and 2 you see actually refers to which power supply they're connected. And then I had this Crockett Fantasy of Lights from years ago where they allow for 2 power supplies to be connected. So it's 4 power injection points each. And it worked out perfect. There's the same thing over there on the other side. Obviously, you can see here now, the tree is gone. Just the frame here remains, next to go. So when you saw me cutting those off there, what I was doing was, when I designed this, I designed it so that a zip tie can go through here, and then there's these holes that guide right here, so that I could slide this on to the paracord, put the zip tie through, lock it in, and be able to put it up and put it down and make sure it goes up straight. You see, it was intended for 6 strips, never really worked out, but that's okay. We'll improve for next year. So the Boscoyo Mesmerizer, with the old tower that I had, I was not able to actually put it up or take it down by myself. So this addition or change really did help in that aspect. Just like that, everything's down. What did that take? 9 minutes and 21 seconds, including me talking. It was only under 10 minutes to take all of that down. So you can see the value of, taking the time to put those pulleys in there. Really made it easier for me to do setup and takedown. So with these elements being the only ones left for me to take down, I figured I would just kind of start the camera and do maybe a time lapse. Just like before, it's another K8. This one though, I'm going to point out, was a real pain in my butt this year. As you'll notice here, I'm actually powering it from the power supply because the onboard power didn't seem to work, at least not consistently. So I have the barrel jack coming in, coming off the 5-volt power supply, which is what I had to run all season long to keep it running. Just a side note. Sounds like my horses want lunch. So just like that, the tree's down. Would have taken 28 minutes for me to take that down. That's honestly not too bad. One thing I will show you that I didn't talk about on the other side was with the pulley that's at the very top of the tree, you'll notice I have this little cap on there. It's just a small 3D printed part that I put on there to make sure that the cable didn't fall off while I was putting it up or taking it down, because that would have been a pain in the butt.